Okay. So hopefully that works a little better, because I am about fucking through with MessVS right now. Okay. Got the final art up there. This one. Okay, that should be a little bit better. I'm sorry, folks. We're having some technical difficulties with this stream at the moment, and I am still having fucking dropped frames for some reason. How can I adjust this at all? Still got poor video quality, huh? Okay. Not receiving enough video, huh? Okay, well, is OBS to blame? Can't imagine that it is. Can't be that bad, can it? Well, we will find out, I'm sure, at some point. Because, of course, OBS never fucking works, and it never works all the time. Good God, I have a good connection. I just don't know what the hell is going on. See, it says that it's fine. It says that it's fine. But then I switch over to this, and it tells me that the stream status is not going well. And I can't really fix that, because I cannot fix the detail. How do I do that? Da 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 da. We may have to reschedule. Yeah, we may have to reschedule. Shit. That is not what I wanted to do. Fuck. Okay, well. Now or never. I think I may have to reschedule. Oh no. That's not what I wanted to do. Okay. Well, I don't want to do this half-assed. Okay. We will reschedule this for another day. Whoever got to see it, got to see it. Sorry. We're going off. I can't fix this. At least at the moment. Or maybe it's going well. God damn it. God damn it, Bobby. I can't fucking viewing. Presenter view. Yep. Presenter view is the one we want. Yeah. Man. That's really frustrating. Is it working better now? I can't imagine that it's not just gonna go back offline again for no reason. Yeah, it says it's fine. It says it's fine. I don't fucking believe it though, because this is remarkably unhelpful. Alright. Well, as long as we're here, I'll probably cut out the first part of that and have to edit it anyway. But that'll be a thing for me in a couple of hours, I suppose. At least for the moment, I'm gonna stick around and keep up the stream details so that I can see how our focus is doing. Yeah, seems to be working well now. That's my main consideration, is the seams part, because this is like the one thing that I'm absolutely terrified of. Because if OBS stops working, I have to buy a new computer effectively. Yeah, because I'm working with some old ass specs of computer here, so yeah. But either way, yeah. So let's get on to this, because I am still dying to see about it, and I know that you guys had it cut off for you in the first start. Again, this is Moritz Bludau's art. We are looking here at the final version, and we'll focus in on some good details here. Again, in the background here, we have Erlock Gower in his kind of OG uniform. We have Vress, our turned but not quite corrupted just yet Sister of Battle. Enoch Inokenti, which, again, it's wild that he doesn't have art, since he literally fights the Saint at one point and is doing pretty freaking well for a random dude. Well, a Magister, not a random dude, but still, pretty well for a Magister. And then, of course, we have Nadzabar. This kind of image is supposed to show that even amongst these folks, who are the traditional leaders on Gora, the warlords, um, he's elevated above them. Yeah, so that's the thing. It's not necessarily just ripped off, it's actually burned off. That is red hot iron that he's using to form the mask. And that's why this first guy, it was a full kind of half face mask, and Nadzabar essentially shoved it into his face and then ripped it back off, tearing off most of his face. And then Nadzabar for himself, he takes a little bit more precaution. Essentially, he slathers his face in kind of a heat-resistant gel, kind of a fat or tallow. But it still, as you can see here, absolutely melts his face off. It basically consumes his nose, basically melting it down to the bone. It cuts through his cheeks in some areas, and it melts the entire front of his mouth off, leaving this fanged maw. As I mentioned before, mutations are not a big thing amongst the Goran population. They've been in chaos corruption of a low level for so long that their genetics are literally hardened against like rampant mutation. You know, no tentacles or third arms or masses of eyes. No, the mutations for the Gorans are pretty universal and pretty subtle. For Nadzabar, it's his eyes. They are like that piercing red color. His claws, which are kind of these black hooked protrusions of nails, and then sharp, almost vampiric-like teeth, which seems to be universal amongst most of the Blood Pact soldiers. They have those kind of hooked, fang-like teeth, and while, you know, you can file down some of those, but it's very obvious in this image, in the unifier, that he's burnt off his lips, leaving those teeth kind of exposed. And I think this is just a great image, a great position for him. Because in the original artwork, he's actually up on the walls. But I almost prefer it down here, because it makes him look from the camera angle as if he's far more elevated than anyone else here, which, considering that this is basically his ascension ritual, or his, like, day of ascension, it makes a lot of sense for where he's standing in context to these warlords and imperials and even the regular soldiery. And the Gower and everything, it's a very poignant image of, like, I'm in charge now, I claim the right as Archon to essentially control of the entire Sabbat worlds, or at least it's declaring his intention. Because you gotta remember, again, from his perspective, he's reviving an empire so old that it's legendary at this point. The old Chaos Empires, or the Chaos Clades of the Sabbat worlds, which had been around since the days of the Great Crusade and before. He's wanting to go back to that time, and this change from a feral, warring, feudal society to an organized military with proper weaponry, hierarchies, chains of command, that don't just come from strength. There's the other thing, is that Nadzabar is big on the biggest and strongest person does not have the right to lead by dint of being the biggest and the strongest. He's not the biggest and the strongest, and yet he's in charge. Why? Because he's smart, and because God chose him to be in charge. Or rather, the kings elected him to be in charge. And he really does believe that. It's a wholehearted, full-chested, throaty belief that I am that guy. I 100% am a leader worth looking up to, and I am a priest beyond any of the other priests. Because there are plenty of other blood priests, both within the Blood Pact and attached to other warbands like Enoch's, and Nadzabar just considers himself superior. And in many cases, he actually is. He's just a better priest, and he has a better understanding of how to deal with demons and the warp and the like. But yeah, you have this image, which is kind of a nice headshot in relation to some stuff that Moritz had showed me earlier from art pieces. This is a great headshot of him with his face burnt off. And then in this final secondary image, you can see just the massive bushy eyebrows, the blood priest hood that he has pulled up. Yeah, it is literally a crowning. It's why I call it the ritual of the ascension, because he's ascending to an office. The coronation that you speak of is very much him declaring himself Archon. Archon, again, is basically like an anachronistic term. It would be like me going into England and declaring myself a Pictish druid. Like, it doesn't make sense, because there haven't been, like, druids in England in charge of anything for centuries. For Nadzibar, Archon is a term that has come down through the histories as a overall leader of an entire empire, and he's latched onto that to give himself a new title that before this point didn't exist within the Sabbat worlds. You know, there's Gower, who's the leader of the Blood Pact, there's the Anarch, who's kind of the second to the Archon, and he makes that up. And then there's the various Pact Sons, Damagowers, Itagowers, all that kind of relation to the Blood Pact hierarchy. And then above that, there is Magister, which he bestows to both Urlach Gower and Enoch Inokenti. But then he describes another position for himself, which is Archon. And Archon is an absolute, it's an imperious title. It's about as close as you could get to godhood before you start becoming blasphemous title. And that's what he's claiming. And then, of course, he's cementing himself as central to the movement instead of these guys, because whose face is it that all the soldiers are going to wear? Is it Gower's face? Do they wear his colors? Do they wear his icon, his personal heraldry? No, they wear the Archon's face. Literally his face. Literally an imprint of what he looks at. Those leering, hook-nosed face masks that the Blood Pact wear, they're iron and steel grotesques. They're modeled off of Nadzibar's burnt-off face, basically. So all of these icons, all these like hooked teeth and curved hooked nose and the sharp upturned lips, it's literally Nadzibar's face. They're wearing his face as a symbol of fealty to the Arcanate. So, moving on to the second one, to Conqueror. Again, at this point, we've been talking about Nadzibar's fantasies, his legends, his knowledge of ancient history. This is when ancient history becomes reality. The Imperium of Man has conquered the Sabbat worlds and held it since around Millennium 36 of the common, Millennium 36, basically. So for over 4,000 years, the Imperium has lorded over the Sanguinary worlds, slightly, but the rest of the Sabbat worlds as well. Nadzibar has finally thrown off this yoke. He's finally released himself from this limitation, and he's gotten the Civitas Imperium, which is essentially the recognition of the Sabbat worlds being an imperial sector. He's gotten that officially revoked from the entire sector, so it's removed. The Sabbat worlds are no longer part of the Imperium as of this image. And he's finally in charge, theoretically, of most of the planets. But he really doesn't feel comfortable. Why? Because he's still afraid of this mythical demon, this legendary figure that was responsible for the downfall of their civilization the first time. He's expecting during the entirety of the campaign that she's just going to show up one day out of the blue and come try and kill everyone. He genuinely has this fear, so much so that he actually goes out of his way to try and find what killed her the first time and attempt to recreate it, or have the creatures that made it recreate a version of it as a failsafe against her return. So Nadzibar does literally create an anti-saint weapon. Essentially, it is a lesser version or a copy of the weapon that originally killed the saint and dealt her the 9 holy wounds. Whether it's some sort of weapon, some sort of device, whatever it may have been, in my opinion, I think it's probably a weapon or set of devices or set of large weapons that were used to bring the saint down eventually, but whatever they were psychoactive or psychically active weapons. Possibly some sort of torture weapon, possibly some sort of actual weapon. We know it was battlefield wounds, and not some other form of like torture or distortion. But until this moment, until he's standing above the saint's grave, he can't really sit comfortable. Now, at this point, of course, you can see from the power armor and from the confidence in his change that he's fought the enemies of Chaos before. He's fought the legions of the Imperial Guard. He's fought the angels that he's so afraid of at the beginning of his campaign. He's fought all of these Astartes and all of these enemies, but he's still not comfortable. He's still not confident that he's going to be able to hold on to any of the things that he's taken until this exact moment pictured here. Essentially, him being able to see that the saint is actually dead and buried, that his legends weren't wrong, that she did actually fall, and she isn't just waiting out there somewhere for him to let his guard down. It's almost a massive moment of catharsis. It's this relaxation of constant, permanent anxiety and vigilance. You can imagine for a moment, like if you're about to go to a doctor's office, or if you're about to have a surgery, that feeling of constant dread, of fear, of not knowing what's going to happen and when it's going to happen and when you're going to know about it. That is very much what he's been feeling up to this point. And even though he's been successful, even though he's managed many great things in the name of his cause, he still isn't comfortable. He isn't confident yet. He is not quite released from that fear until he stands above her grave, quite literally. And just in terms of detail for the art, you can see some really beautiful things, honestly. Not only do we have our first truly armed and armored Death Brigadier in the way that they should be, you can see definitely like a hotshot lasgun, full carapace armor, full enclosed helmet, very much the heavy infantry aspect of the Blood Pact on display here. But you can see as well that he's got a bunch of attendants around him who are also blood priests attending to him. And I just want to point out some interesting things here that Moritz did that I like a lot. His legs are the thing that's mostly armored, which makes sense for a dude his age. Running and moving around at high speed is going to be a little bit more difficult. Yeah, Khorne did grant him a younger body, around 50 years old, but a 50-year-old body that's been through this much combat can still have injuries. It can still have arthritis and difficulties of that nature, so it would make sense that he would favor keeping on his armored leggings, essentially to assist him in movement. And then you can see as well the shoulder pads from his armor. His breastplate is probably behind him being set up. And then, of course, you can see the helmet, which, God, I love this helmet. It's so good. It's so cool. Not only does it give space for his absolutely banger mustache and for his incredible hawk bill of a nose, but it's also got that very interesting mix between, like, a Pickelhaube, that kind of German turn-of-the-century helmet with the spike and the rounded top. Yeah, it is legitimate power armor, and yeah. So, after that ascension ritual, he goes into the warp to seek Khorne's approval for the crusade. And Khorne not only approves and speaks to him directly, but also he returns him to the mortal plane with about half of his age taken off. And yeah, that is full-on human power armor, 100%. But yeah, that's why he looks so young. That's why this version of him has his face back, and he has his facial hair back. So it restores a lot about him, that journey, because it's essentially right before he starts on the actual militant part of the campaign. It's the point that we're at right now, actually, in Corrupt Contenders, is where he's just been restored, and he's about to begin his first true invasion of an Imperial world. He looks about like this, minus the power armor. So other than the equipment, this is Nadzibar at the current moment. Tattoos, beard, and all. And you can see, just incredibly well built. You can see the adorable little hooked claws. God, I love his claws, and the mustache and beard so well. But it's very much like yoked out Saruman. And yeah, so it's not clear what the anti-saint weapon is just yet. It's something that we're getting from the Grell, and it's under construction. It does seem that it's going to be a very large object. Could be something that was related to her death originally. Could be an improved or a degenerated version of that. We're not quite sure yet. But yeah. And also you can see at this point, at the point of the Conqueror, he does have his Volkite pistol. Which again is probably filched from one of the Forge World's under storages or vaults. And then here again you see a much better image of that curved sword. This kind of Khopesh or Shotal style sword with the sword breaker in here. This is a power sword. or at least it's some sort of similar thing to a power sword. Could be a demon weapon, could be a heated blade or something of that nature, but it's probably a power sword, from what we can tell. I think it would make a lot of sense for Nadzibar to choose the power sword, but he's also got it patterned in the way that traditional Gorin weapons are. Very hooked, very curved, lots of catches and dueling pieces to it. Because back in the day, Gora didn't have a lot of metal, so a lot of their weapons were designed with this lack of resources in mind. So there would be one bladed edge that was heavily curved and had a spike, and that was the only thing that was metal. Everything else would be wood, and it would be pretty thick and durable so that it could turn other blades, and you could kind of block with one edge so as not to ruin the actual blade. In this case, it is a power sword, so he's not worried about that. This is just a partially stylistic, but also, yeah, a really cool idea to have a power sword that incorporates a sword breaker in it. Yes. The sword breaker is great. I really love it. And I think my original concept was that it would be in the very middle of the sword, but I think having it down by the hilt, the way that Blue Moritz did it, is actually way better, because it almost makes it look like a dagger blade and then the actual sword blade. And you can see very much the cutting side of this weapon is heavily, heavily forward. It's got a hook on the bottom here, so he could stab as he goes down, but even this, the real cutting surface of the blade is almost like an axe. So it's a very choppy weapon, or a very swooshy weapon, and I like it a lot for how Nadzibar uses it, kind of in the context of he's either going to be fighting two-handed with his staff, or he's going to be fighting pistol and cavalry saber. So he's going to be using it in that very dueling plus pistol way, or he's going to be using the halberd. You know, does he want to use one or the other for duels? I think the halberd is probably a worse option for duels, just because even though it gives him a reach advantage, it doesn't have as much ability to do damage, because it's not a power weapon or anything, it's just a standard traditional weapon, but it has a ranged flame option on the very tip, and it's kind of enchanted, so it can do damage against demons. But when it comes to fighting against immortals like the Astartes or against humans, he would probably leverage the power sword and the Volkite pistol instead of the halberd. So yeah, and then you have that very focused, kind of penetrating glare Nadzibar, which I've used for our channel art, and I like it a lot. I'm not sure if there's any detail or necessary detail about the eye 8-pointed star. So yeah, the head is an actually giant crystal. So that's a big-ass crystal, inside of which are bound two pink horrors of Zeech. So it is literally a staff that can shoot fire. So it isn't powered or anything, it's just a flame-shooting staff. It's not necessarily better. Again, it doesn't have any field or anything that protects it or penetrates armor. However, it does have the ability to shoot out warp flame. And he can empower it to be much more powerful to shoot out warp flame. So that can penetrate armor, and it can melt people and, you know, be a flamethrower. But it is genuine, like, pink flamer of Zeech warp fire. It's not like flame, it's actual warp fire. And then, of course, on top of that, it is just like a demon halberd, so it's a lot more durable than the average. The crystal's not going to, like, shatter or anything. He can use it as kind of a big-ass club. You know, plus, having a blade, having hooks, all different ways to do that, and getting stabbed with all the spiky bits is also very dangerous and deadly. So yeah, I love this image. This is really, like, one of my favorites, because not only does it show us an interpretation of what the Saint's tomb looks like, but it also shows us this in-between phase of Nadzibar as the conqueror, the way that we would have seen him in the books that we never had, essentially. So this is what he looks like up until the Battle of Balhaut. So this image, the monster, is not accurate to what Nadzibar looks like for most of his existence. For most of his existence, he avoids any mutation. He avoids any visible damage to him from chaos, corruption, or anything like that. He looks like a regular human. And I love the helmet, because it's a mix between Pickelhaube and, like, samurai kabuki mask. Or, like, the samurai, like, face protection, which is very cool. And then finally we get to the monster. This is the detail image of the beginning of his end, the Battle of Balhaut. And again, you can see here, the Death Brigadiers, definitely with their hotshot packs or their hell guns hooked up. They've got a dead Terminator here. I think that he probably has gotten shot with the Volkite, considering that it's smoking and he's smoking as well. So he's probably been cooked by the Volkite. But you can see, Nadzabar fits the description that he has at the end of essentially at the end of the book. Or at the end of his literal description. Yeah, definitely can use the armor as a weapon. And yeah, much like a possessed, the armor has changed to accommodate the new form. It's even cracked in some places to actually accommodate how big he is now. You can see that there are cracks out from the side where he's grown an extra arm. There's cracks along the leg where his hip has grown out to accommodate the tail and the foot. And again, this is just Moritz's insane attention to detail. I didn't ask for any of this. This was just his impressive work, honestly, to do this. But you can see, it's much more like traditional armor now, encompassing this massive form. And even as strong as he is here, you know, strong, lithe, feral body, much bigger than these standard priests or even the Pact Sons that he's working with, he's much stronger here. It's nothing compared to these literal, like, Mr. Universe biceps. He's enormously powerful as this pseudo-prince. But as I mentioned, it fits what is described at the end of his life. 3 faces, 3 heads. In this case, it's probably 1 head that's his physical head, 1 head that is his soul, or like the id of his body, which was trying to ascend, and then 1 which is a demon that has managed to hitch a ride into his body. And then you can see the dragon tail, the leg, his arms. These little black protrusions, they're the black chitin that is described in the description of him at his end. So these are like chitinous, like bug spines or protrusions coming out from his arms, taking the place of his nails, and of course growing out of and through his armor. And there's a lot to analyze in this image. I think the first one is these 2 Pact Sons over here. Yeah, he's got those cornroids. And yeah, it does look like a hound. I think it's more of a dragon, especially considering, like, the tail and the foot. Considering, like, again, these are not random mutations. This is, like, halfway through the ascension process, which, if we were to take this image and then mirror it, essentially all 3 heads would become 1. They would mix together to make 1 demonic visage. He would grow another arm out the other side, and then the other leg would become draconic like this one. And then his whole body would essentially extend a little bit, and that would have been Demon Prince Nadzabar. But, obviously, it stopped halfway. So, in the intention, technically, he could have had 4 arms and legs, so he could have been like Fulgrim with legs, essentially. But since it didn't complete, or something went wrong with it, or maybe he resisted it at the very last moment, it pulls him out of it, and it creates this absolute monstrosity that is what is kind of left of our noble Archon. And remember, he resisted every temptation up to this last point. This is his last mistake, his last kind of gasp at trying to, quote-unquote, do the right thing and manage the correct ability, and he fails at the last moment, and that kind of just leads to this monstrous creature wandering the halls with his attendants, trying to kill everything that he can, just to take his last vengeance out on the enemy. And I love how normally it takes Nadzabar 2 full hands and his whole body to wield the halberd, and then in the hands of the monster, it's just like a single-handed weapon. He's basically wielding it like a battle axe with 1 hand, which is terrifying. And then, of course, he's got the pistol and the sword in 1 hand, which, again, makes sense for the idea that this was his, like, dueling setup, which was power sword, which I love the fact that the power sword looks like heated here, like white-hot metal. You know, is that indicative of a power sword or a demon sword? Could be either. Theoretically, you could make a power sword that also had a heated blade. Why you would want to do that? Because it's cool. But yeah, this is definitely possible, and this is likely a power weapon. But you can see, even just among the Pact Sons here, and I like to point this out, this dude is clearly set up to be a Death Brigadier. You can see the unique helmets, the spikes. But what's more important is you can see the iconography, this kind of shield or bevel that he has out here. And yeah, the tail would make a very nice weapon, which is very cool. And I'm sure that we'll get there, whatever many years we have to do to go through this. But yeah, that's these guys. That's Nadzibar and his Death Brigadiers here, which, again, I cannot imagine being a Death Brigadier and seeing Nadzibar like this, because these are all people who have known him for a long time, probably decades at this point at the very least, if they're his Death Brigade. So they would see somebody who was at one point so upright and upstanding and so pure of purpose devolve into this monstrous creature, and they are just still devoted to go on, devoted to go with him, sticking with him to the end. Yeah, I agree. I think that would make a lot of sense as well. Kind of a demon blade. But, it could be a power weapon as well. Who knows? We have not gotten to that point yet in the campaign where we know what it is. We will get there eventually. But yeah, again, this symbol is unique. This image on his armor. I had a friend make it for me in college, and it's now become my de facto image of the Blood Pact on the Warpath. Kind of their battle standard, and you can see it marked again here on this dude's shoulder, kind of sloppily. That kind of leads me to believe that this might have actually been stolen from another Terminator and then hastily modified to be a shoulder protection. So this might actually be the covering for an Itagawa's refractor field. So this guy might actually have a refractor field on, which would make sense if he was like a leader of the Death Brigade. I forget what the exact position title or officer's title for a leader of the Death Brigade is. It might be Fel Damagauer, if I remember right. Something Damagauer. It's essentially got a prefix to it. But yeah, he might have a refractor field underneath there. And then you can see, of course, the Silver Guard. Like I said, the Silver Guard basically devote their entire first company to trying to break into the Doctrinopolis, which is Nadzibar's headquarters. And they're devoting the entire first company essentially means that they are the first ones past the breach. They don't make the breach, it's the Imperial Guard who end up making the breach, but they're the first ones past the breach, and they're the ones who are with Slato, along with some elements of the Imperial Guard, when they meet up with the Death Brigadiers and with Nadzibar the monster. And of course, Nadzibar here has slain probably one of several Terminators, because of course, the idea is essentially a squad or two of Terminators fan out within the Doctrinopolis to try and find Nadzibar and to kill him, and they run into not an old, decrepit man in some power armor wielding a staff. They run into this massive pseudo-prince with like 1,000 of these Hell Brigadiers behind him, and they just get absolutely blitzed like this guy did. And you can see, like, I love the symbolism in this image. You can see Slato so driven, so out there with the Emperor's power, so intentionally bringing destruction upon himself so that the Emperor's will can be done, to the point where he already has a mortal gut wound, or at least a severe gut wound, and he's still calling out Nadzibar, and these Terminators are clearly, like, halting and pulling back, watching this dude get absolutely pounded. And then the image of the face, like, Nadzibar's over here. He's not even acknowledging or looking, but you can see from his expression and from his eyes, he's looking to see where Slato is. He's looking to try and understand in whatever fugue state, in whatever insane, frothing-mouthed state of mind, whatever despair he's currently in, he's trying to at least face towards his enemy. And in his very last moments, he can't, because these two other heads are getting in the way. And I think that's just the most insane poetic justice. That this demon and this id, this image of his psyche or his ambition, they're looking down at his achievements and over at his rivals in his last moments, where his own body, his own face, his own mind can't necessarily comprehend or come to grips with the fact that this is actually going to be his final battle. After a century of, campaigning, essentially. Or half a century, I should say. But yeah, I think it's just such a poetic image, and it has so much symbolism in it. From the position of these Death Brigadiers, like, this guy doesn't even look worried that they're fighting Terminators. This is a nonchalant human being. His gun isn't readied. He's calmly sitting, waiting on his lord for orders. He's not even really stepping down the stairs with any urgency. This guy, too, he's not looking at Slato and the other Terminators. He's aiming to confirm the kill on this Terminator. He's essentially 100% confident Nadzibar's got this. This guy, at this very moment, has not a single worry, has not a single concern for Nadzibar having this fight. And whether that's overconfidence, whether that's veterancy and just not being afraid, whether that's absolute, aloofness. Maybe he's like, well, I'm a Death Brigadier. Whether or not my lord, my life ward, whether or not he has this fight, I have to do my job. I have to make sure that he has the best possible chance, and at the moment, the only thing that I have to worry about is confirming the kill on this Terminator. And you can see that single-minded determination as he steps down and preps to essentially double-tap this dude in the back of the head. And this guy as well, clearly like an abnormal helmet, abnormal equipment, and he's just chill, relaxing. And there's probably a few hundred of his own kind behind him, and they're just not at all concerned. And I think that has to do a lot with the fact that Nadzibar has been around these people for so long, and that while they may in their minds or in their hearts have some concerns or second guessing as to his current state of existence, they're just very well trained and very well disciplined to not get in his way once the ball gets rolling. And of course, after this, the fight that I described in that intro begins. The chaotic back and forth between the prompt critical sainthood Slato and the pseudo prince Nadzibar occurs. Everyone gets pushed out of the room. Nadzibar wounds Slato 11 more times, several of them mortal, and then eventually, by the end of the fight, Slato manages to kill Nadzibar, and then, with his power expended and with the Emperor's will done, Slato collapses, looking much younger than he did when he came into the room, but still slain and killed. There is then a back and forth over both of their bodies. The Death Brigade try and recover Nadzibar. They despoil Slato's body. They destroy it and kind of damage it, trying to slaughter and destroy him. It's unclear what they managed to salvage of Nadzibar. It was claimed that the Imperials burnt at least part of his body. Whether they got his equipment, weapons, armor, heads, whatever it may have been, the Death Brigade at least had a period of time to not only scavenge from his body, but take portions of it and then escape. So it's unclear about that. Yeah. Yeah, they very much, I think, have faith in their Archon, which at this moment is probably misplaced faith, but it's just a very interesting image to see all the symbology and all the difference and deference in these images. Like, in comparison to these Pact Sons, these Terminators almost look afraid. Like, their weapons are down, their fists are down, they're clenching their arms. They're standing behind Slato, which I find even more interesting. The War Master is stepping ahead of the Terminators. This Terminator has clearly planted his feet, and he's clenching a fist, clearly about to make a decision. This Terminator is looking to Slato for direction. He's looking to Slato for what to do, and he's watching what Slato is doing for his cue. They almost look afraid in comparison to these Death Brigadiers. They almost look unsure at the death of one of their leaders, as opposed to these guys who have been through a full battle of Balhaut as nothing but mortals, and they don't have a single shred of doubt in comparison to the body language from these Terminators. Yeah, just a great image, honestly, and one that I could honestly look at for hours, and that's why I made it the banner art for our YouTube page. But yeah, here's the full art. It's absolutely great. Here's another one of those head vignettes. This is definitely like older Nadzibar before he got his face burned off, and before he got rebuilt or rejuvenated by Khorne. Not much to say about this one other than that you can kind of see that smug superiority, which is another thing that I absolutely adore about Nadzibar. He's got that level of like, uh-huh, I am that guy. I am him. You know, I'm a schemer. I'm successful. What do you got to say about it, essentially? I love it. The confidence. He exudes it. So, let's get on to other artists. We have two important ones here. There is a unnamed but kind of semi-credited artist. When I was originally writing for the lore of the Sabbat Worlds, I was writing about Sheabal the Red Hand, who is pictured right here. Sheabal Red Hand is the leader of the Charismites, which is one of those Magister cults that works for Nadzibar. Originally, I'd had him looking very, in my story, the Charismite and the Sarian, which you can read on AO3 if you feel like it. Yeah, I do also love the Cornate Rune earring. I think it fits pretty well for a guy of his age. If you want to read this story, you can. The image is up there. But this was my first attempt at kind of visualizing what Sheabal would look like, or Sheabal. He has two things that are very important about him. One, in this image, he's supposed to be in a chem shroud, kind of like a semi-void suit, to help protect him from like low temperatures. But you can see he's got this kind of heavy head protection, classic like trench coat architecture. But at the end of the day, he is like a legit pirate. And the other thing about Sheabal is his red hand. The red hand in this reference is, of course, because he's ripping a dude's heart out, but more specifically, you can see it in this image. He has a regular human arm, and then he has a demonically possessed arm. And this is quite literal. There is a demon, a creature of the warp, that resides within one of Sheabal's arms. And it creates this special connection with the warp. He's able to speak to this demon, some ways to control it. It can dramatically enhance his strength, as one of his limbs is enhanced by demonic power. This image is related to that story, and it's a pretty good one. You can look it up if you'd like. But this was my initial image of what Sheabal would look like. Kind of this slick-sided, almost like off a cereal coat, very kind of copying off of naval slickers from the Second World War, like those leather trench coats type deal, like a seal coat. But I think that this one is even better. Even though this is an earlier version of Sheabal, this is Sheabal during Operation Red Drake, and this is Sheabal during his earliest days in relation to the Pact, when he is still a pirate. And you can see a couple of more unique mutations here. The first one, other than his facial structure, obviously, is he's got these blue and red feathers coming out of his hair. Now, that's a very unique mutation, and that comes and goes over his story, but it is a pretty consistent thing that he has this kind of mane or additional, like, feathers, like Zechian bird feathers in his hair, and then the red demonic limb that is on his side. Again, this is Isel Morn. This is Isel Morn's art. This was done for one of the other characters in our campaign. The one who's playing Sheabal commissioned this piece of artwork. And again, he's using that classic armsman's shotgun along with a chainsword. This is a Cornate warlord in every sense of the word. You can see the kind of piecemeal void suit, the lengths and shreds of officers' clothing, and then the classic Cornate chainsword and shotgun combo. Very useful for inside of boarding activities, which is something that Sheabal does a lot, but also a pretty effective indication of what his job is. He's a raider, he's a brute, he is a scavenger, and above all else, he's a naval commander and a pirate. And you can really get a sense of that from this image. He's in that kind of thin, dark hallway that would be indicative of shipboard combat. He's got the shotgun, and he's got it hooked up to his belt instead of around a sling or anything. So even if he has to drop it to use the chainsword. Yeah, so... yeah, he was mutated before the demon got into his arm. The story behind the arm, Sheabal already had some mutations because he'd already had some blessings from Khorne, while he was working for the Blood Pact as a Magister. He's one of the first Magisters, and he's the first one to come from outside of Gura. Essentially, he lands, and Nadzabar and he make a deal for materials and service in exchange for a position as a Magister. And, of course, some extra assistance. We gave him some some magic weapons and some other things of that nature, some chaos-afflicted enchanted weapons. But what happened is Sheobal got into an unfortunate position where he was very close to a warp portal opening up, and it sucked his soul directly out of his body, essentially. So body didn't go into the warp, soul went into the warp, body went into a coma, pretty much, because it was an unnatural intake of warp energy. A greater demon destroyed an artifact in front of him. The artifact opened up a warp portal. It sucked his soul right out of his body like a Go-Gurt tube. And it left him kind of in this intersistence for a short period of time, trying to escape demons and run away from the forces of the warp. He ended up falling through into the deeper warp and hitching a ride on one of these clouds that brings demons to the upper level of reality. Again, the areas inside of the warp kind of work like a mix between real space and the water system. Things bring chaos demons up to the surface, to that intersistence phase where they can then push into reality or prey upon souls more easily, or more choice souls. He lands on one of these kind of cloud barges with a bunch of demons on it, and he manages to accidentally strike a deal with not a Herald of Khorne, but a Juggernaut of Khorne. And the Bloodletter writing it essentially offers to bring him back to reality and throw him back into real space in exchange for Sheobal owing him a favor. The favor originally was supposed to be that the demon inhabited Sheobal's body and possessed him entirely. Through a long and extremely painful process, Nadzabar managed to prepare only Sheobal's arm for the demon to keep it contained there, so that the demon didn't really have a claim on his entire soul anymore, because he had technically fulfilled their bargain, giving him a corporeal vessel. So that arm is essentially the result of a forced demonic bargain, and a lot of effort on Nadzabar's part. I'm going to be honest, that might have been almost more effort than Sheobal was worth. Just kidding. But it was a lot of effort. Essentially, I flayed his entire arm down to the bone over a series of hours while he was conscious. And then I also, every single time I would make a cut, I would bathe it in the entire lifeblood of a human sacrifice. And I did this for enough periods of time that 1,000 sacrificed humans had been slain. And that was enough to draw the demon and to prepare the area for its inhabitants. And then, of course, it created the mutation that you see here, that red arm. But yeah, a long and incredibly painful process as that was, it has given us the Sheobal that you see here, with his mutated extra-large limb and his, fancy hair feathers. Which, I like Sheobal a lot. He's got a lot of lore to him. He's got a lot of things in the books that he does, or that he's related to. He's one of the Magisters that we have the most actual detail on, which is one of the reasons why I chose to write about him in my fanfics. The ones that I wrote for AO3. But yeah, it's a great image, and I think, all appreciation to Isilmorn for sharing this. This is not my commission, like I said, but it is a great commission, and I got to look through it very well, and it was very, very good to see. So, lots of love to Isilmorn Art. Thank you very much. So, now we get... Oh, and also, I don't know the name of this artist, but I think they are credited somewhere, and of course that's a signature for them. But they did that for my AO3 story original. Now we get to the big one, Axis Art. Axis Art, or I think Axis Blood on Discord, but Axis Art did this for me. This is the artwork for Edge of Night, and I'm not going to go into all of the lore for Edge of Night, because it is a massive, 3-part, almost short novel series that I wrote. The first part is up on AO3, but it's kind of old. I'm working on the second part at the moment, but I'm kind of in a drought because I've been very busy. And also I have more art coming that's going to inspire me to finish off more of it. But this is a Night Lord's Warband, and essentially the idea with this story was, how how do warbands sustain themselves, and how do they bounce back from taking a lot of damage or injury? Essentially, this is a warband that is pushed to the absolute brink. And of course, these are Night Lords, so they're pushed to the absolute brink. At the beginning of this story, there are only basically 10 Night Lords in this entire warband. They have one puny little escort. They've sold everything else. Yes, that is a possessed. They've sold everything else and gotten rid of everything else after they've been chased down by the Space Wolves. So they're fleeing. They've lost all of their brothers. They're down to the absolute nadir of their numbers, only 10. And they have to try and get their numbers back up. But how do you do that? Well, you have to attract Astartes. But that's basically a suicide mission. There's only 7 of them that can deploy to a planet at once. So, they go on this absolute suicide mission. And this is the first part of that mission. Essentially, the whole goal of the mission is to drop down onto an Imperial hive world. In this case, it's called Hadria Secundus. They drop down onto this hive world, they massacre a bunch of PDF troopers, and these are PDF troopers with modified land crawler tanks that also work as APCs. Here we have our possessed, Joe Cartathax. He has a flame weapon in his tentacle arm, and he has a chain fist as his other limb. We have our buddy here, Savadon, Velig Savadon. Velig Savadon is the last Terminator available to the warband. He's got some heavily modified Terminator armor, and his weapons are kind of this heavily spiked slab shield and a single-barreled 30mm autocannon. And this thing just wrecks. It's a brutal weapon wielded by a brutal old warrior. He is one of the only ancient Terran Marines left to the warband. The rest of them are kind of half-breeds, chimeras, or second generation after the Crusade. Savadon is one of the only actual true Nostroman veterans left amongst them. And at the end of the book, I'm not going to spoil it for you, actually, because this is a very good story, and I'd recommend you look into it. But yeah, this is the first initial image. They've broken down onto Hadria Secundus with their kind of infiltration squad of 7 Marines, and they're trying to cause as much damage and as much public suffering as possible to try and draw loyalist Astartes to the area so that they can ambush them. And then the next piece that Axis did, by the way, Axis did this for free. I just want to say, did all of this for free. As part of that 40k Big Bash AO3 stuff that I was talking about with Sheabal, did all of this incredible art for free. And then in addition to that, plus, on top of this incredible artwork, with all of these details and this great color work and gradient and shading, just beautiful, beautiful stuff, on top of that also made me this. This is the ambush scene. This is the ambush scene. I'll send them to you. If you want, DM me on Discord, Tribly. I'll send that story to you. But this is the ambush scene from that story, Edge of Night. And you can see all 7 of the Marines in this image. You can see Savadon with his 30mm and his shield. These are Angels in Carmine. They are Blood Angels' successors. The Marines, the Night Lords, have set up inside of this kind of atrium area in the bottom of the hive. And they've set themselves up to ambush these Marines as they get in. They've dealt with the first wave. And this is, yeah, so they're dealing with the first wave of them right now. I think it's like 15 Marines versus 7. And it's just a nightmare scenario for these loyalists. They're caught in this funnel of fire. They all try and run out towards the stairs, and they just meet this impenetrable wall of a Terminator. And then on top of them drops this massive, terrifying possessed. There's Terminus. So just to point out the characters for you here, we have Savadon. We have Joe Cartathax, our possessed. We have our main character, Ithshael, who is the Proditor. He's got this kind of crowned, horned helmet and this beautiful dark blue Night Lord armor. We have Terminus, who was made with like Iron Warriors or Imperial Fists gene seed. He's got a rocket or missile launcher. And then we have 3 Raptors, whose names. One of them is kind of like a half alpha legionary, and then the other two are basically like copies of each other, one younger, one older. And they have paired chain swords, all these hooks. The idea is with this kind of ambush, and I love it so much because I spent a lot of time on this organization. The idea with this ambush is essentially the Marines come in, they engage, they run up the stairs, a bunch of them get knocked out or incapacitated by either the Possessed, the Terminator, this Combi Plasma, which Ithshael has, or the missiles, and then these three Raptors fly down, grab the bodies, hook them onto the hooks on their armor, and then jump over all of their allies to go and collect the bodies. Because at the end of the day, they don't really care about their own lives, and they don't really care. Well, they care about their own lives, but they don't really care about, like, winning this battle. The only point of this suicide mission was to collect as much gene seed and material equipment from the Loyalists as they possibly can. And so the idea is essentially, as the Loyalists go down and get incapacitated from the front four, the back three will jump over, grab whatever they can, hook them up to their armor, and then get back to safety in the little abattoir to the left of this image. And this is just one of the most beautiful pieces of art I've ever seen. It's not only because I make a very, like, personal connection to this warband, because they're my guys, I made them from scratch, and their lore is all about the stuff that I like in Chaos Warbands. It's not just the fact that they're Night Lords, because honestly, these are like the least Night Lordy Night Lords. Especially in the second story, they move far away from the teachings of Conrad Kurz, and far closer to the teachings of our leader boy here, Ithshael the Proditor, or the Proditor. So, by the end of this story, things look a lot differently, and then by the start of the next one, it's a totally different story. But this art is really the paramount of all of my work that I spent on that short story or that novel, and it's a great fight scene, even just from the very start of it. It's very traditional. You can see the kind of progression, the steps that are going on, the firepower that's getting slung around. I like it a lot, and you can just see the absolute wall of fire and the flame weapon from Cardathax. It's a great image, and I love it a lot. And I do also have more art coming from George Earl Abelayan. So, like I said, that first story is complete, and I am moving on to the second one. And of course, how could I have artwork for the first one without also commissioning artwork for the second? And this is the best sketch that I have received so far from him. We see our Proditor, Ithshael, in that stolen Angels in Carmine kind of artificer armor. He's got his new helmet. In this case, it's from the Dart Mechanicus. And he has his weapon here. So, the Proditor has a severe deformity. One of his arms has been essentially obliterated by psychic powers wielded by one of the rune priests of the Space Wolves, that has turned his arm essentially from the elbow down into this useless vestigial blackened husk. It's still the right size to fit a gauntlet, but it can't move or flex at all. So he's devised a kind of paraplegic alternate weapon because he didn't really have the option for an augmetic. Because he simply didn't have the connections to get one. In this case, it's this pure adamantium axe blade and spike. And this is a brutal dueling weapon that he uses a lot in the first book to fight against enemies that not only have, like, power weapons, but also enemies who have chain swords and other things of that nature. And he retains it into the second book. And then here again we have one of the new Marines who come out of that desperate situation in the previous slide, and they are once again fighting Space Wolves. So that'll be something that goes into more detail once I get the second book or story out, but that will be for another time. This one is kind of a non-40k one, but I had to add it because I was doing a lot of commissions around this time. This is from Artivity. Again, this sketch is from George Earl Abelayan, and I'm still going to get the rest of it and the finished one soon, hopefully. But this Artivity one was done very well. This is a character that I consistently use in Dungeons & Dragons. It is a Tiefling Barbarian. Very odd build, like her a lot. Zalaforus is the name. A lot of backstory to her, but definitely not something that I'm going into in this stream because we are kind of running out of time. But I know it's just you here, Trippy, so we're going to skip the Q&A for the moment and go straight to the end of this one. So, as mentioned, sorry about this being a two-parter. I know it's going to come out 1 and 2, but it's streams. People will get it within a couple of minutes, I hope. This is, again, part of our 500 subscriber kind of drive and special. There's going to be a long upcoming combo video, hopefully without any technical difficulties, where we'll be going over the Primarchs, some of their equipment, technology. We'll be doing that as a group. Again, I'll be posting it up and having everyone around for that so that we'll talk about it first, and then I'll make a standalone video on it. So that'll be streamlined for all that. The next thing that we have to go into after that, because that's probably going to be within the next like 2 weeks, maybe. That'll be the end of our subscriber special when I start going back to making videos more consistently. Again, I'm getting up to finals in school, so I'm going to have more time in the future to get stuff done, but at the moment I'm still kind of like go, 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 go. So this is the best that I can do in terms of like streams, especially with like limited days like I have today. But apart from that upcoming stuff, I will say at the end of that celebration, at the end of like the next week or two maybe, that will be the time where we go back to the brand new and improved channel formula. So all the decisions will once again be in the hands of all of our viewers. And we will be very specifically looking at things that people want to see, things that they want described to them, and details or logic things that they want worked out. And again, these will be much more high quality, more professional videos. I'm not going to claim that I'm going to be doing a ton of editing in every single video, but I'll be striving to do a lot better with that, less hiccups and fuck-ups like I have in all of these streams, and I will also be doing it hopefully more consistently with more and more content coming out. Of course, videos, I've given you a couple in the last couple weeks, but we're keeping the streams for just now because it's making it easier, and also because, you know, subscriber special. I want to hang out with you guys as we get more and more of us here. But as we go into that, as we move further into that stuff, the decisions will be in your hands. I'm open to a lot more things. So one of the things that was suggested to me was moving into more like video game stuff. So trying to analyze weapons from Helldivers, for example, or analyzing weapons from the lore of other groups. Obviously, I already did Halo, but I can do more stuff from Halo, tanks, things of that nature. All that stuff will be back in y'all's hands. So I hope that this makes a good one for you. I know it's only 7:10, but admittedly we did have a bit of a mess up, and I think we lost some people, so that's probably my bad. But if there's no questions at the very end of this, I will wish you all a lovely good night.